9:42 p.m. on January 3rd, 2024. My name is Sam Frick, and just coming off probably the worst podcast show I've ever had. And it's to put it lightly. When you're in this industry like I am, some days you just go 0 for 5 with 5 strikeouts. And tonight, that was 0 for 5 for me for tonight. I guess the show went fine for what it was because, we had Warsaw Sports Armin on and she talked about her team, and I thought it was a pretty good interview for what it was. We did get Kate Jansen from Northrop briefly talking about her team, and it was heading in the right direction until internet reasons happened. And that's all I can really say. And it really just irritated me the whole night, unfortunately. And then we had Isaac Andrews on, and unfortunately could not hear him really well, so I had to kind of work around that with trying to salvage something with the show, since he was technically the last guest for the show, and internet was down for 5 minutes, and then I had to kind of remake another episode, remake another show because of the internet having its issues. And so here we are. Where it's 10 o'clock, and I'm probably emotionally, I'm tired, I'm upset, frustrated. This was going the right direction, and it was a good plan, and it just, things beyond my control happened. And I think sometimes I beat myself up way too much. But I thought I handled it the best I could. If people thought I did a crap job, oh well. I can't control something that was way out of my control. And I guess we move on. So we'll just go ahead and briefly just recap things from last week. I want to try to do this every week where I do an audio preview of the upcoming games of the week, and to kind of just introduce our matchups. So let's kind of just briefly recap last week. So Bellmont got off to a very strong start, led by as many as, I think it was 11 or 12 points in the first half, and kind of like the Bishop Lures game, Eastside just did not shoot the ball well at all in the first half, really until the second half, really until the third quarter. It was just, Eastside was just playing catch-up almost the whole night. In fact, I don't think Eastside even led this whole game, and Bellmont ultimately won 48-34, even though Eastside cut it to 5 points in the fourth quarter. Bellmont was able to persevere, get some stops, made some shots, get some free throws, and that was all she wrote in a 48-34 Bellmont win, where Emily Blake had 24 points and Haley Cole had 14 points, close to a double-double. She had a nice game defensively for the Bellmont Braves, and really they did a good job of defending the paint and be able to get in containing Eastside's shot selection and not giving up too many of those offensive rebounds. And when they did, it was only in short spurts, like the third and fourth quarters. They kind of were short spurts where Eastside made a comeback, got it to 5 points, and we thought, okay, this is that run that Eastside was going to try to get on, but it never happened. Then Caleb Roth covered the East Noble Central Noble game, and for the first time since 1975-76, Central Noble wins at East Noble by the score of 69-52. Really, Central Noble led the whole way through. They led by as many as 22 points. The Cougars never trailed this whole game. They scored the first 8 points in the game. East Noble, excuse me, never got a rhythm in that game. They missed 18 free throws. They had committed 18 turnovers. Central Noble scored 29 of their points off of those turnovers. Central Noble just dominated this game. Drew Pleat with 20 points, and Jane Tilley with 17 points and 5 threes. And Central Noble enters 2024 with momentum, and they're going to have an opportunity to build on that going into the NECC tournament as they host the Garrett Railroaders. I was going to say John Bodie, the Garrett Railroaders, but I forget he's coaching the girls now. But still, he'll be heading. But either way, he is returning to Central Noble for the first time since leaving the Central Noble boys program at the end of last season, and returning to his alma mater in Garrett. Garrett is rebuilding this year on the girls' side, but they're gonna compete. It's kind of how it works with Garrett, but obviously they're definitely not what the program that they were a year ago or even 2 years ago. For that matter, Central Noble will be favored in both games, but I would say don't count your chickens before they hatch with those games there. So if you're wondering, like, what are the games of the week for this week, we have two for the NECC and two for the Northeast States. We'll start off with the Friday selection of games, and we'll start off with the girls section. And we will begin with the 6 o'clock tip-off between Eastside and Fairfield. Eastside is heading to Benton. Benton, for those that don't know, is nearby Goshen. And the Falcons are the defending conference champions, or defending state champions in Class 3A. Fairfield enters this game at 13-2 and 6-0 in NECC play, despite the fact they graduated their top scorers off of last season's team. They have a new head coach, although relatively a familiar name in Fairfield, and Kyle Hartman, a Bishop Wainer grad, mind you. And, they've returned quite a few players back on that team, but on roles that they did not have previously. But nevertheless, Fairfield continues to be one of the top teams in the area, led by Eva Herbert, averaging 13 points per game. Kaylee Dillon averaging around 12. At times, Madison Jones has been productive as a freshman, big on that Fairfield team. They're not as deep as they were last year. I don't know if they're quite as good as they were a year ago, but obviously they're quite good, or they wouldn't be in this position today. And in a running for the NECC championship, which we didn't think it would happen. We thought maybe it would just be Eastside and just kind of cruising through the NECC, but I think Fairfield's culture continues to be excellent, and I think it just shows the character of this Fairfield program that Brody Garber has built for many, many years, and Kyle has continued to sustain that here. Really, and we'll talk about this when I post the previews here, really what's going to really boil down to this game is going to be, number one, it's going to be the rebounds. I think that's going to be a very big indicator of who wins this game. That was a big indicator for Eastside early on against Bellmont. Really, who can control the glass and be able to execute offensively the best is going to be very important. Both teams are coming off of kind of sluggish performances. Eastside had to make a little bit of a comeback in the second quarter to make this even possible, but Eastside ended up being DeKalb 54-51 at Triumph, which, to be fair, DeKalb is not an easy team to beat by any stretch, especially when you have Ashley Cox, the junior, averaging 20 points and like almost 10 rebounds a game, and then you have Abby Harris averaging like 8 points a game. DeKalb also plays a very good defensive style, and it does seem to frustrate teams. And so that's that. And then Fairfield going to Garrett. Fairfield maybe a little sluggish coming off a break. But either way, Fairfield was able to hang on and win 43-37 against Garrett. Those are the type of games that are always tricky because you think this would be a blowout or a double-digit win for Fairfield, and then you realize, oh, wait, this is a holiday break. This is coming off a holiday break. They're coming back from a long amount of downtime, mind you, and either way, and then it's also a long road trip for Fairfield. So either way, Fairfield does come away with the win, and both teams come in 6-0 in conference play. Eastside 14-2. Both teams 6-0 in NECC play. We'll see whether or not Eastside can achieve one of their goals, or at least get close to achieving one of their goals, and that's to win the regular season championship for Eastside, which has not happened since, I believe it was 1992, I believe. I'll have to kind of do some research as I'm talking here. I know they haven't won the conference tournament since 1994, and it feels like an eternity for that program since they've last won a conference tournament championship. And I know Mike Lordy has made it very clear that has been one of their main goals, is to bring some NECC hardware back to Butler on the girls' side. They've waited a long time for this opportunity to await itself. And, we're talking about 30 years since Eastside last won a conference championship of any kind. Here we go. So last time Eastside won a conference tournament came in 1994. That was against Fairfield, ironically. So if Eastside wins the conference tournament, it may end up being against Fairfield again, just kind of repeating a little bit of history there. But Again, we can't make assumptions here, but again, it seems like that seems to be the likely matchup going into next weekend and that conference tournament. In terms of the regular season, Eastside had not won a conference regular season championship since 1992. Besides that, they have never had a season where they've won both the conference tournament and the conference regular season championship as a member of the NECC. Now, I cannot confirm what happened in the ACAC. I know they've had some runs in the late 70s during its early years of history where they were very, very dominant. And this year's they were off to their best start since the 76-77 team. So we cannot confirm whether it had ever happened before in the ACAC, but we can definitely confirm in the NECC they have never won both the conference and the conference tournament in the same year. This game on Friday will be the first step of achieving one of their goals. And then for Fairfield, they want to repeat what they were able to do last year. And that for Fairfield was ending a long conference tournament drought that stemmed back to 1996. On the boys' side of the NECC, we're just going to go a little bit quicker here. West Noble defending conference champions going to Lakeland. Lakeland comes in 5-3. West Noble 4-5. Both teams sitting 3-1 in conference play, with Fairfield being the only undefeated team in NECC play at 2-0. Fairfield is playing Eastside. This Eastside team is on a rebuild, so we would expect Fairfield to win this game, with all due respect to Coach Prokop and what he's done at Eastside. But Fairfield is definitely a better team in comparison to the likes of the Eastside Blazers. But this West Noble-Lakeland game is going to be a very intriguing matchup. These are two rival schools, only about 20-25 minutes apart from each other. And there have been some memorable games being played between these two teams that also, ironically, play in the same sectional. And you got a West Noble team. They defend well with that zone press. They got their big power forward in Braden Barth. And Ethan Marsh has built a team of hard workers, good athletes, and a team that just shows no quit. And that's what you're seeing with West Noble. This year, no Austin Kripe, no Nevin Ferris, no Luke Skimmerhorn, no Aiden Zavala. And yet West Noble is a competitive team. A lot of their losses for West Noble have come by single digits. I mean, they lost to Wawasee, which came at the buzzer. They lost to East Noble by 13 points, which was a single-digit game for most of that game. They lost by 6 to Concord. Concord's a very good basketball team in the Northern Lakes Conference. And then they lost by only 3 points to Central Noble, which you can argue that West Noble probably could have won that game. Ironically, they're going to be playing Central Noble again next week, which was the conference tournament title game a year ago. Central Noble had previously won 3 consecutive conference tournaments prior to West Noble snapping that streak. But I think with Lakeland West Noble, the key is going to be, I think for West Noble, it's going to have to be defending the 3. This Lakeland team can knock down shots. And I think the transition offense is going to be something they're going to have to limit here for the Chargers. I think West Noble's inexperience in the backcourt is going to be inevitable, that they will have some turnovers. But I think the key is going to be, can they get back on defense and limit the damage from the Lakeland offense. And you got a team with Nate Kyle, the only senior on that team, and you got Keegan Merrifield on the post, Kyle Hartsoe, the sophomore point guard, Nate Kyle kind of the other point guard for the Lakers, and then you have Levi Cook as a forward, kind of doing what Levi Cook does best, even on the football field. Big, strong kid, tough-nosed, very athletically gifted, as you've seen in the past with him. Keegan Merrifield, good hands, a lot of length, just a good, tough kid for that Lakers team. And you got Justin Carlson, and Carlson can hit some shots, and he showed even in the Westview game that he can come up with big plays on both ends of the floor. And I think that was something Chris Kyle was wondering coming this season. Can a guy like Justin Carlson make plays on both ends and be a big part of Lakeland's momentum-building season? And I think we're seeing some of that so far this season. Now, their only loss in conference play came against Fairfield by 14 points, I believe it. No, it's 15 points. It's by 15. And if Lakeland doesn't get help in the conference play, that might be the game that decides the NECC championship. But the way things have been right now in the NECC Northeast State, I don't think we can draw any conclusions yet on who is the true front runner in either the NECC or the Northeast State, which is going to lead to a good transition to the Northeast State on the girls' side, as Columbia City entering this game 14-2, 2-1 in NE8 play, travels to the TP, take on Bellmont. Bellmont has won 13 games. I think they're 13-3 last I checked coming into this game. They have won their last 2, if I'm not mistaken, because they lost to Concordia 28-25 at the buzzer, and then they beat Eastside by 14 and beat Bluffton 38-28 the next night. And so Bellmont looking to stay undefeated in Northeast State play. Last year they came very close to knocking off Columbia City at Columbia City. I think it ended up being like 40-38. I think Addie Baxter made 2 free throws down the final seconds of that game to win it by 2 points. By the way, Addie Baxter just recorded 1,000 points in her career, becoming the first Columbia City Lady Eagles since Connie Myers, in the 2000 grad, to do it for the Columbia City Lady Eagles basketball program. The key is going to be with that game, I think, with Bellmont, is going to have to be rebounding. That's Columbia City's milk and butter. If Columbia City can crash the boards and be able to knock down some threes, it's good morning, good afternoon, good night for Bellmont. Bellmont needs to have a strong defensive game. I don't think there's any other explanation but that. I bet you Annie Heim will talk to me about it and say, hey, this is what's going to have to be. We're going to have to play good defense. We're going to have to contain Addie and Kendra, right? And Kendra Sheets. And then we're going to have to control the glass, because this Columbia City team is quite talented, and they showed that in Newcastle when they played Indian Creek and Jennings County, that Columbia City can beat these type of teams when they put their best out there and they're at full strength. And it really, Columbia City's challenges are really within themselves, really. From a talent standpoint, they have all the things they can do to make a run the state tournament. It's just all the little things and just battling any type of psychological demons that seem to get to Columbia City sometimes when they play a team like Norwell or Homestead. It's not so much with Bellmont, it's these other matchups that, for whatever reason, Columbia City just doesn't always consistently play to what they're capable of. And I think part of that is, I think sometimes they're just hard on themselves. And maybe the tournament at Newcastle might have been just what the doctor ordered. We'll see. We'll see if they can get that figured out. Time will tell. And then on the boys' end, same 2 teams will play each other on Saturday night at Columbia City. Bellmont off to their best start in 20 years. At 10-2, they'll face Columbia City at 7-6 at the Eagles Nest. Bellmont coming off a successful tournament at Richmond, where they lost to Bloomington South, but then won their final, I believe, 2 games in that tournament, including a double overtime win in that contest. And then they had a win against Seton Catholic, I believe it was, where Jack Scheinman had 34 points in that game. And he's averaging 19 points per game. Only Jackson McGee has scored more than him at 21 points per game. And Bellmont just a week prior came off a 66-62 win over Adams Central, where they were down as many as 14 points in the second quarter, and Bellmont came back in Bellmont fashion and winning it by 4 points. Can the Bellmont Braves do it again? Bellmont has mostly been irrelevant in both the Northeast Hoosier Conference and now the Northeast State over the last 2 decades. Now, the last couple years they've been competitive. Maybe not enough to really make that much noise in the Northeast State, but they have been competitive in the past. In the last couple years under Jonathan Filling, and now with Coach Peyton Selking, Bellmont has seen some rejuvenance of experience, toughness on defense, and obviously a pretty talented team that I think was severely overlooked going into the season. I wasn't sure if Bellmont was going to have that same type of energy this season, because we had not seen it up to this point. We knew they were good, but the Bellmont's challenges were just very minor things, and offensively and defensively, just putting it all together. And maybe this is the year that we're finally seeing a complete Bellmont team that can do everything. They can score, they can get to the basket, they can knock down shots, they can make free throws. They're a selfless team. That, you know, sharing the basketball is not an issue. They got some bark, as you can hear my dog in the background. They got some bite in them in terms of that toughness. And defensively, they're very sound defensively. And they built everything on defense. And so this is such an interesting matchup going to Columbia City, playing an Eagles team that's very talented. Even though they lost Andrew Hedrick to graduation, Columbia City returned a lot of pieces on their depth charts, including Stratton Fuller, who's only a junior. He's going to be a big football name for a collegiate program in the near future. He's off to a nice start, coming off of that buzzer-beating shot against Carroll about a month ago, which Stratton Fuller, for some reason, just seems to always have the the full-time showmanship against the Carroll Chargers. And then you have Aiden Denny, who leads the way in scoring, averaging 14.6 points per game. Brady Hartman's had some nice games in the past, especially recently. He had a 23-point performance against Blackhawk Christian on the road in Columbia State's 50-49 win. You have Matthew Mulligan, who had 21 points in the 60-46 win over, at the time, was a shorthanded Canterbury team. And, you know, this is a Columbia City team that really can beat anybody. They have been able to beat certain teams. They've been able to beat Carroll, which not a lot of people saw coming, and it was in comeback fashion. They beat Blackhawk Christian. They were down double figures. Not a lot of people saw that one coming. They almost beat Warsaw, and that didn't seem that doable, playing a Warsaw team with the talent they have, with that roster top to bottom. Just a lot of nice pieces on that Warsaw team. And then Columbia City's had some interesting realms of adversity. They lost to Whitco in overtime, where Kyra Kroll had a monster game in the season opener. The first game with him and his buddy Sam Masijan, who transferred from Central Noble to join the Whitco Wildcats. You also had the NE8 opener, where East Noble held on for a 59-56 win at the Big Blue Pit. And that was a game where Columbia City really had a lot of opportunities to win that game and just came up just short in that one. And then the Delta tournament, I don't care too much about holiday tournaments, but the game against Concordia does stand out a little bit, because that was a game where they were up double figures again, and Columbia City just couldn't get it done, and they lost by, I believe it was like 3 or 4 points to a nice Concordia program. And so Columbia City is a team with a lot of talent, but it just seems like a team that's not exactly as experienced as the team from a year ago. And it's a team that's just trying to put the pieces together. Bert Zarman talked about, trying to get things in sync, right? And it's just simple as just little things, just trying to get the team on the same page, trying to put get the team at the best position possible to be successful. And that's why you test your team, so that come playoff time, you're best suited to clean up those mistakes in the playoffs, and you're seasoned, you're mature, you've built character as a result of that. That's why you have a season. I'm curious to see how Columbia City confronts the defensive pressure that Belmont's known for. And Belmont's going to press. They're going to be aggressive, and they're going to try and get to Columbia City's heads. That's what Belmont's going to do. Belmont's not going to stop playing defense. They're going to play 4 quarters of basketball. They're going to be tough, and no matter how well they do offensively, they're going to play hard defensively. Columbia City's going to have to match that intensity, and I think that's going to be the challenge playing Belmont. And so, whether Columbia State is able to match the energy of Belmont and able to come away with a close win, that's going to be huge. Right now, the NE8, it just seems like there's a lot of parity in this conference, and I think we saw that last night with Leo and Canterbury. I know Canterbury brought their other kids back from, they were able to play their first games as Canterbury Cavaliers, and players that were not named Devon Lewis, like Tucker Day, for instance, the Homestead transfer. He was the one that scored the game-winning tip-in to beat Leo 67-65. So I think with the NEA, there's just so much we just don't know about yet. Remember, Huntington North lost their first 7 games, And they had a couple of games where they could have won easily. You know, against Leo, they only lost by 4 points, 69-65. And then you had the loss against Manchester, only a 4-point loss against a team that has Gavin Bennett, who's probably going to be a Division I recruit somewhere. And there's just so much we don't know about the Northeast State. We don't know exactly how good East Noble really is. We know they're off to that 7-3 start, but it just shows that if you're not playing your best basketball, anybody can beat you on any given night. New Haven's off to a 1-8 start until last night. They beat a solid Snyder team 65-61 without a Johnny Washington. New Haven, a young team trying to learn how to play together and learn how to play at the varsity stage, but they have a lot of talent on that New Haven team. You know they're going to get this thing figured out, and they figured it out last night against Snyder, led by James Hardy IV, who is a talent of his own right. Now can New Haven string together some wins, and I think the game against DeKalb is going to prove that. It's going to prove whether they can do that or not. And DeKalb's not necessarily the best team out there. Now, I think DeKalb can beat New Haven this year, but I don't know if DeKalb has shown that they're better than a lot of teams either. So the NE8 is just so wide open. It's just, even Norwell, a team that graduated a lot, and they're still really good, led by Ashton Fetterspiel. Can Norwell defend the town of Leo with Jackson McGee and Trey Height shoot, especially with McGee averaging 21 points per game? It's very important for Norwell to defend the paint and limit McGee's looks and limit his touches and force Leo's other role players to beat you. And that's going to be the challenge with Leo. But on the other hand, for Norwell, but for Leo on the other hand, Ashton Fetterspield's a double-double machine. They're going to have to do a better job of cleaning up the glass and defending Fetterspield. And I think Canterbury was a good test to foreshadow what they need to do against this Norwell team. And then from there, on the girls' end, what's going to happen with can anybody beat Norwell at this point? Because I think that's going to be the challenge. We're not going to know that till probably the Belmont game in a couple weeks. But it's interesting to note with that game. And then East Noble, Huntington North. East Noble just lost to Angola tonight, 51-48. Can the Hornets get that loss out of their mouth, and bounce back into Huntington North? That's a tough game to bounce back from a loss to Angola. But East Noble has had a good season, but I think the youth of East Noble has shown that maybe East Noble isn't quite ready for these big moments, for these big games. But I think the fact they're this competitive early tells you they have a lot of potential ahead of them. But that's all I really have for now. Stay tuned for the previews coming up over the next 48 hours as we prepare for the NECC and the NE8 games of the week, the final ones before the NECC tournament, as next week we will not do an NECC game of the week due to the NECC tournament, and we'll only have one for the Northeast State. So, my name is Sam Frick. Thank you, and have a good night.